right, well, thank you guys for coming today. I think as most of you know, last year we had an incident in Sacramento's area where a burnover occurred and a firefighter was injured. And today we have Captain Steve Eggiman here to give us a review of that incident.
Of the fun that it was. All right, Jackson Highway, Bradshaw. You guys all know where that's at. You guys will probably go there tomorrow or the next day. June 10th, 2008. Sitting in the recliner after lunch. Had a big old lunch. Red flag day. You know, winds of 12 to 15, gusts of 30 to 35. Humidity was in the teens. 90-degree day. Typical day like we have every day in the summer here. So get a call for a grass fire on Jackson and Bradshaw. Like we go there every year, multiple times every year. As we're getting the engine, we're leaving. I have myself, engineer Mike Angotti, firefighter John Kendrick, and we have a Type 4 brush truck, basically, out of 64. 64 is on Folsom in Vancouver. En route, the sheriff's helicopter is on the air talking about it's a small fire slopping up against some green belt. It should be, you know, it's a small fire, no big deal. So immediately we hear that, let our guard down. Instead of talking about the fire and what we're going to do, you know, we're talking about other stuff. I answered a text because I just learned how to text, so I thought I was Mr. Technology, you know. So as we're en route, we're talking about, okay, well, this should be code 4. We'll be done pretty soon. We'll be back pretty soon. As we pull onto Jackson off of Bradshaw, we've got horizontal flame links blowing over Jackson, smoke laying down horizontally. So it's like, okay, guess we're not going to be turned around on this one. So 54 arrives first with Roger Ferentz, who's an older captain, that immediately took the cold flank that was surrounded by 2 streets and a canal, and the fire was burning back into the wind. So he took that flank, which left Grass 62 with an engineer and firefighter to take the hot flank. Captain off of engine 62 took command, tried to set up A&W, tried to set up the ICS, and basically wasn't working out. You'll hear it on the radio transmission. Didn't work out well. So as we arrive, Captain Vitti assigns me Division A. And at this point in my career, when I was assigned Division A, it was more of a thought, a guideline for me. It wasn't like an order. So instead of assuming Division A like the company officer that I am, I kind of said, oh, okay, yeah, okay, whatever, Division A, you know, we'll think about it. So as we meet up with Grass 62, I see up on a slight slope, there's a single wide trailer. So I tell IC, okay, we're going to go and we're going to set up a perimeter around this trailer. He's fine with that. Okay. I've known Vitti for 20 years. We went through the city tower together. So we come up Jackson, turn onto the gravel road, single lane gravel road. And as I tell you this story, all these red flags are going to be going off in your head. All these, the 18 watch out, I broke all of those. And the other standard orders, I broke most of those. The only ones I didn't break were it wasn't nighttime and I wasn't asleep. All the other ones are pretty much broke them. So we coming down Jackson, turn onto this gravel driveway, okay, come to this gate. And at this gate there's an old lady and there's like a 12-year-old boy and a 9-year-old boy. The old lady obviously has cancer. She has that gray cancer look. She has no hair, the chemo hair. She's got a chemo port sticking out of her chest and she's got a particle mask on. Looks terrible. So we pull up to the gate and I tell the little kid, the 12-year-old, I say, hey, can you unlock the gate for me? He goes, no. He goes, my dad has the keys and he's at work. I go, okay. So I tell my engineer to cut the lock. So as he's doing that, I'm looking at this lady and I ask the kid, I go, is she okay? Does she need an ambulance? And he goes, yeah, she's okay, but everything she's ever had and everything she owns is in that trailer. I go, okay. So immediately, being the young company officer that I am, I'm hooked to this call emotionally. I'm going to save this trailer if it kills me, which it almost did. But, you know, so get the gate open and I tell them, okay, we'll save your trailer. So we go up about 150 feet. This is just a single gravel road that goes back to other houses. single gravel driveway that's an offshoot, and there's a mobile home, single wide right there. We nose our engine in, we nose the grass rig right here. We have what was the right flank was burning basically parallel to it. Well, as it shifted, it turned into the head. So I have fire blowing or burning right about here, kind of paralleling. So my engineer takes a inch line off, inch cotton jacket line off, and I take, firefighter stays in the grass rig, and we're going to go mobile into the black, fight it inside out, and split the head. That's our plan, just like you guys do all the time. Well, as we start to take the grass rig towards the black, I step into this trench, so we can't go anywhere with the grass rig. So I tell him to stop and back up. So he backs the grass rig back up onto this driveway. Engine's right here. Engineer's about right here. So I pull the booster line out, meet up with the engineer, and we're going to split the flank around the mobile home. And the fire behavior was no big deal. It's 3-foot flame lengths in light flashy fuels, no big deal. I was handling it easily with the booster line. Walking fire line about to here, okay? So problem was, this is all green. This is all light flashy fuels, pretty chest high, red flag. This is all light flashy fuels in here. So I had to wade through this green to get to the fire line, which that's no good. So as I'm putting out fire along the fire line, no big deal, everything is fine, until I get to about right here where there was a wind eddy coming off the trailer, the mobile home. And I thought, I don't know what a wind eddy is. I'm not a CAL FIRE guy. I was on a truck for 16 years. Not a lot of wind eddies on the truck company, So as I get to about here, the fire and myself step into the eddy at the same time. So I felt, I perceived a wind shift, but it wasn't a wind shift, it was the wind eddy. And in all these Mayday things that you'll ever hear, mine, Jeff Helvin from the cities, the guys on 65th Street, there was something that told them something wasn't right. And it's up to you to either listen to that or not. And I chose not to. Okay? Helvin, he had, all of a sudden it got hot and the smoke banked down real quick. The guys on 65th Street, the roof gave way just a couple inches. Okay? And they chose to listen. Well, I didn't. So as I perceived the wind shift, I looked back at my firefighter in the grass rig, and as I turned back around, I had a wall of fire coming at me. My flame lengths have grown from 3 feet to about 12 feet. So I take my booster line, open it up on hopefully the seat of the fire. From about me to him, it turns into a U, blows back all over me. Not just a mist either, just like a bucket of water all over me. So I'm all wet, and I'm thinking, this is not good, Took a knife to a gunfight is what I did. So I look back at my hose line where my safety zone was going to be the black. I could have just stepped right into the black. Well, now, because the hose was pulled into the green and is bowed over, it's paralleling the fire line, but now I have 10 to 12 foot flame lengths horizontally blowing over the hose. So I can't go that way. Can't jump into the black because I can't jump 12 feet. So I decide that I'm going to drop the nozzle and I'm going to run back to the grass rig. Okay, by this time, I'm losing all visibility. I describe it as when you're at the car wash and that thing's on your window. That's what it looked like on my goggles. Couldn't see anything. Started to get really loud. Started off as a low hum and then got super loud. The CAL FIRE guys all talk about how loud the fire is when you're in that situation. And I always thought, they're CAL FIRE, they don't know what they're talking about. Well, they were right. Super loud, so loud that you can't think kind of loud. And then obviously it was really hot. Because as I stepped in and the fire stepped into the eddy, it started blowing around and gaining size and fire intensity, which I was kind of right in the middle of. So couldn't step in the black, couldn't do anything really but run for it. So as I drop the nozzle and take off towards the grass rig, well, the duff was about a foot thick because it hadn't been grazed or mowed or anything burned in years. So it was about a foot thick. By this time it's orange. It's all hot coals. So take off running, trip, and fall into it. And as I'm falling, all I see is orange. And I thought, this is not good. So I land in it, get up, know that I'm hurt, hands are hurting. take off running one more time, and I had more forward momentum the second time. So as I fell the second time, my hands went under the duff and burnt the tops of them. So I get up, realize I'm in trouble. Can't see anything, can't hear anything. It's really hot. I'm hurt. So you think of, people ask, well, what were you thinking of at that time? Well, I was thinking of I was going to miss my workout the next day. I was going to not be able to pay my mortgage. All kinds of things run through your head. Is Copter 1 here? Because I'm going to tell them to drop on me and it'll sound all cool, but didn't do that. So try and key up the radio to call my mayday, and my hands don't work. I can't key the radio. So I took my gloves off. You know how at a structure fire when you're overhauling, you touch something hot and you think you're hurt, take your glove off to check out your hands? Well, that's kind of what I did. Took my gloves off, held them up in front of my goggles, and the skin's hanging down about a foot. I thought, oh man, gonna miss that workout the next day. So I keyed up the mic, called a mayday, and on the radio traffic, you'll hear one mayday. Well, I said mayday, 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 emergency traffic. And I said it a bunch of times, but you won't hear that on the radio report exactly. So decided, okay, I got to get to the grass rig. So took off running again, fell one more time with no gloves on, but it was just a quick down and up. And then took off one more time, 4 times, college try. Fell down the 4th time, and as I fell the 4th time, I tucked my hands in and landed on my arms. Burnt my arms because I had a single layered jacket. I was the only one in our department that hadn't been changed over because I'd been on a truck all that time and just got promoted to captain. So after I got up the 4th time, I've realized I've got my mayday off. I don't have any more options. I have nowhere to go. I can't put, people have asked me, well, why didn't you deploy your shelter? Well, first thing, it would have blown away the minute I took it out, and secondly, I'm not going to deploy it in a bunch of coals. You know, that's not gonna feel good.
Sure, we have a way to pick you up.
Exactly, scoop me up in it. So standing there, realize that I'm totally disoriented, totally lost, have no idea where I'm at. I've already called for help to come, just waiting for them. So I'm standing there thinking, okay, you know, you're screwed, basically. So I'm feeling which side the heat is coming from, and I turn my back to the hottest side and put my face in my hands like this to protect my airway and just ask God to make it quick, because I wasn't going to die a slow, painful death in front of them single wide on Jackson Highway. I wanted to just be incinerated, you know. So after I did that, I wasn't really scared, wasn't really anything, just kind of sitting there waiting for it all to happen. And then the eddy, it eddied out, just like on the river. The fire eddied out, blew right by me, and as it blew by me, it was like standing at the beach in the water, looking at the shore, and a wave breaks on your low back. You kind of go like that, and then the wave rolls by. That's exactly what it was like. Fire just rolled by after that. It was all calm and quiet and peaceful, and my crew had took shelter in the engine, but to say that they bailed into the engine isn't what they did. They made numerous attempts to come get me. They tried to make a corridor with the 1.5 inches for me to find to come, but they were just beat back by the heat and the fire. Basically, when they got in the engine, they had fire blowing by either side of the engine. It was nothing but orange blowing by either side of both windows. So they were in there saying their prayers and making their peace. So as it all blew by us, they got out, and I ended up right here. I was aiming for here, ended up right here. And it was only about not even as far as the other wall in the other classroom that I was trying to navigate. So when they got out, they said it was like a Hollywood movie. I kind of walked out of the smoke, and I was all, you know, skin's hanging off my hands about a foot, and my turnouts are all burned up and everything. So they immediately, firefighter paramedic starts assessing me, cutting everything off. And you know how when somebody's looking at you, you can kind of tell what they're thinking? Well, it was pretty obvious what they were thinking, because they weren't looking real good. They were looking a little worried, a little nervous. So they cut all my turnouts off, and they loaded me in the engine. Well, as they loaded me in the engine, grass rigs were coming up here, coming to the rescue. There was a couple of them coming up. So as they loaded me in the engine, we started to go down here, and we all met right about here. So we couldn't go back. They couldn't go back. We couldn't go forward. There's fire on both sides of the road. You know, I remember looking at Kevin Alameda's eyes in his goggles, and his eyes filled up his goggles, and he's a 25-year veteran. So on the radio traffic, you'll hear me saying, you know, come up, come up, come up, but we couldn't go anywhere. So I tell my engineer, Mike Angotti, to just take it, go around him. And this field was basically a typical field, not plowed, you know, weeds on fire, yard cars everywhere. You know, it was a miracle that he did as good a job as he did, but he's a good engineer. So he took the engine off-road, $250,000 rig off-road, you know, we're bouncing around. He's trying to make it as smooth as he can, so because I can't grab onto anything. So we get to the road, Medic 62 is right here waiting for us, and we pull up behind him and they get out, and there are 2 firefighter paramedics, and they're all in full grass gear, goggles, the whole thing, which I thought was kind of weird, you know, because they usually are just in Class B, so I thought that's weird. So we got out, get to the back of the medic. I took my radio off and handed it to the engineer, said, here. To this day, I don't know why, just was sick of talking, I guess. Handed him, get in the back of the ambulance, and they had a paramedic intern who's out here in this academy class right now, as a matter of fact. But a young guy, you know, he looks like he's 15. Standing in the back of the ambulance. As I get in, our firefighter paramedic looks at him and goes, I'll take this one. So and you can see the guy's like, okay. So he goes and sits down on the bench seat, and I go and sit on the bench seat, and I asked Tim White, firefighter paramedic, I said, hey, you want me to sit on the gurney, lay on the gurney? He goes, yeah. So I lay down on the gurney, and immediately the intern, doing what all interns do, they slide over and they're going to do some patient care, right? Well, I put my hand on his lap, and he looks at my hand and goes, oh, God. I go, dude, nice bedside manner anyway. So his job was to keep my hands moist with saline in a basin the whole time on his lap. That's what I assigned him to do. And then the paramedic, you know, he was starting a line, going to give me some morphine and everything. And me telling you this, I was not calm at all. I was the worst patient that's ever been in the back of an ambulance. I was making up cuss words because I was running out of cuss words. And they were not doing their jobs fast enough or good enough, and I was up there on their butt the whole time. So we take off towards the hospital, code 3, taking off. Tim started an IV from behind me because I was flailing around so much. He hit it the first time, started giving me morphine, gave me 10 immediately, which for all you firefighter paramedics, it did absolutely nothing for the pain, nothing. And I had a total of 30 after all this was said and done, and it did nothing for the pain. So we're en route to the hospital, code 3. We're turning off 99 onto Stockton. Tim gets on the med net and says, med center, we're coming in code 3 with a severely burned firefighter. I have a IV established with 10 of morphine. See you in 5 minutes. MICN comes back on and says, negative, we're on diversion. It's not hurt bad enough. Take him to Mercy General. So, what? So Tim, all of a sudden, the pain goes away, the siren stops. It was one of those moments in time, you know. We kind of look at each other, and he gets back on and says the same thing, and she goes, negative. We're on diversion for immediate only. You take him to Mercy General. Well, immediate only, code 3 with severe burns, firemen, I'm thinking all 3 of those override that. So anyway, firefighter paramedics, they turn the ambulance around. Okay, and they caught a lot of shit for this because they're 2-year guys that were doing what they were told. Okay, and I know what you're thinking right now. Well, I would have just went. Well, you know, you guys have been around a lot longer than them. You know, that's a decision that they made, and it didn't affect the outcome in the long run. They were just doing what they were told. So we arrive at Mercy General, and they wheel me in, and the looks on those nurses and doctors' faces at Mercy General were priceless. They were over their head immediately. They didn't know what to do. They immediately put both hands in ice water, which, you know, I'm not a paramedic, I'm barely an EMT, but, you know, 3rd-degree burns and ice don't mix. And I kept taking them out, and they kept putting them in. It was a big old battle. Then my ambulance crew and the intern were sitting in the room with me because they just didn't feel right leaving me there. Just was not going right. So then the intern, you know, taps Tim White on the knee and goes, hey, is he supposed to be breathing 4 times a minute? No. Once again, I'm not much of an EMT, but that's not in the parameters of respiratory rate. So they started bagging me, And I woke up with the whole or nasal airway in, the whole thing. Woke up for a second, went back to sleep. And at this time, our EMS officers got involved. Scott Clough, who some of you might know from 53, he's very, very outgoing. And saying he's very outgoing is like saying the Titanic is a boat, kind of thing. And Brian Shannon, who was our other safety or EMS captain, he's 6'8", used to play tight end at Marshall, very imposing looking. So Clough gets on the phone to the burn unit and makes them tell him what the title of the burn unit is, you know, firefighters burn unit, and where all the money comes from for our burn unit. And they're all, oh, you guys, you know, okay, well then why is he at Mercy General? So then Brian Shannon shows up at Mercy General, basically takes one look at me and the care that I'm getting and says, load him up on the gurney, we're taking him to the med center. So he basically kidnapped me to the med center. So both those guys risked their careers in that day for me. So we load me up, go to the med center. They're bagging me the whole way to the med center. Get to the med center and I wake up in the ICU room with a burn nurse on either side of my bed tearing the skin off my hands. That stung a little. And then go back to sleep, wake up, and headed for surgery. So that's kind of the quick down and dirty of what happened and the fire and all the mistakes that were made. And you'll hear on the radio transmission the mistakes are very